Many regions in Egypt have their own distinctive fashion that comes from their unique local history and demographics. Unfortunately, this is not something that, in my experience, many people have studied in depth, so while I will go into regional and minority ethnic fashions I have information on, there is unfortunately a massive disparity in what has been studied and made so that way it's easily accessible. There are even fashions that I'm aware of that have a distinct regional dress, which I cannot get into because the lack of information would lead an entry into being a mere sentence. The sumptuary laws targeting Copts and Jews in Egypt included wearing a sign on their clothes or a specific garment, Jews wearing bells attached to their sleeves, restrictions from wearing certain fabrics, requirement of certain turban colors, limiting the color they could use to make clothes, limiting the amount of fabric they could use to make clothes, and non-sartorial restrictions such as not riding horses, and laws regarding the building and repair of places of worship. The Pact of Umar specifically restricted hairstyles, a style of turban, shoes, and required the himi to wear a zunar, distinctive belts. It is worth mentioning that the Pact of Umar is a document with uncertain history with varying opinions on when it was written, if it was ever a contemporary document of law, if its format makes sense within its supposed historical content, if it was written over time or was a living document, and so on. Rulers who did enforce laws in line with the Pact of Umar sometimes made additions. The bells mentioned earlier were enforced by El-Hakim, who also required Jews to wear a wooden calf pendant in public, and neither are part of the pact as far as I can tell. He also required Jewish women to wear one red boot and one black boot, and only boots. Copts were required to wear a heavy cross, and the calf had to be replaced with a bell when in the hammam. Both a requirement of black clothing and a restriction from wearing red specifically for Christians are mentioned as being enforced by other rulers as well. Due to this discrimination, Copts and Jews dressed like their neighbors whenever possible so as not to be singled out, with the exception of religious garments. As such, Copts do not have a distinct recent dress as indigenous people, to my knowledge, and there aren't ceremonial garments specific to Egyptian Jews as there are in the Maghreb and other regions. These sumptuary laws are not always enforced, obviously are not enforced currently, and I have had difficulty finding artistic representations of them outside of photography. As a note, while many English language resources use giyar, in this context specifically, it simply means garment in Arabic and gives no indication of what the special garment or sign on their clothes was. The folkloric dress is a term I'm using to refer to a style of feminine galabia, which typically has a high yoke, high waistline, or no yoke or waistline. It has long sleeves, sometimes gathered to a wrist or cuff, and frequently will feature a ruffle or pleated section near the bottom of the skirt, or sometimes a ruffle or lace around the yoke. Many regions have variations on this dress, some more unique than others. It is more common among fellahin and other poorer classes. This is the closest thing I would describe as a national Egyptian dress, as in something that was worn all over Egypt. This dress is attested as existing and being known of in Europe as far back as 1887 when the book Fancy Dress is described, or What to Wear at Fancy Balls by Ardern and Holt stated, "The real Egyptian dress is not suited to fancy costumes. A fellow woman wears a loose half-high bodice of washing stuff, a necklace round throat, plain woolen skirt, a sash of many colors round waist, and a handkerchief gracefully twisted about the head." Akhmim historically has been a site of fabric production, with many leather shoes dating from 600 to 700 having been found there, as well as woolen artifacts. A characteristic fabric still produced is a double-sided form of weaving with floral patterns. This is sometimes described as and is made on a horizontal draw loom. Similar looms are used in China and India. There is also a new style called Akhmim embroidery, which is a naive style that started in the 1940s and has similarities to Wisa Wasef tapestries in what is usually depicted, natural scenes from the lives of the creators, of people and the landscapes around Egypt. In Edward Lane's book, The Manners and Customs of the Modern Egyptians, he notes that the women south of Akhmim wear a garment of brown wool called a hulaliye, which resembles the Amaziach melefa, which in turn resemble the Greek peplos. It fastens at the shoulders, and a portion of it might be drawn over the head to cover the hair. Historical sources attest to Amaziach presence in Sohag and Quenya, where Akhmim is located, which could be an origin. In fact, it is said that between the late 1400s and the early 1800s that the Amaziach were the true rulers of Upper Egypt. Assuat as a region is a producer of tul biteli, or Assuit fabric, which is well known due to its popularity among white colonists and tourists in the early part of the 20th century, and its continued popularity in largely white vintage fashion circles that emulate the style and sometimes behavior of those colonists. This fabric is probably related to the metal embroidery used for towels and other items in the Ottoman Empire. Tulbeteli is made of strips of metal, usually embroidered on a netting made of silk, cotton, or flax. Traditionally, the fabric was black or white, but recently colors such as pink, green, red, blue, and more have been used. Before the mid-20th century, the strips were made of real metal, brass, copper, gold, silver, and plate, or straw, but now are made of lame, colored or plain steel, and plastic. They are never more than 3 millimeters wide. The designs used in tulbeteli include ewers, flowers, people, animals, and simple geometric designs. Tulbeteli and teli are technically different techniques but functionally have similar motifs and use. Tulbeteli was prominently featured in Assuit women's dresses called talbisa, and the strips of metal were sometimes worn in a bride's hair. A similar practice exists in Turkey and Albania. Some Assuit fabric is also produced in Akhmim. 3 lesser-known styles of dress for women exist in Assuit: the robe worn in the house, the robe worn outside the house, and the shaga. The robe worn in the house is described as follows. It is made of cotton fabrics with bright colors and decorated with floral motifs. It is characterized by long sleeves, rounded or squared neckline, waistline, pleats, and flounces in the lower part. The robe worn outside the house is the same except it is made of black fabric. The shaga is a garment worn to cover the body, save for the eyes, and is made of black fabric. The dress worn in Baharia is made of black satin finished fabric and embroidered with wool or silk in red, green, fuchsia, and orange. The metal pieces sewn on near the neck are called hirayat. It was popular from the end of World War II, but after this point those in al-Bawiti dressed more like the women of Fayum. It is called a gatar or quatra and is made of 12-karat gold. It is only worn by married women on the left side. The bagma, a beaded collar similar to the Pharaonic broad collar, is worn and made here. Similar dresses and beaded jewelry are made throughout Egypt, but I don't know their proper name, and it is very likely that the name bagma is specific to Baharia. They wear a lo, a 10-centimeter metal pendant with 15 galagil on the lower edge, which is superficially similar to zar amulets. It is frequently strung with colored beads. There is a specific ring to this area which is believed to help with breastfeeding and is, in essence, shaped like a breast. Ahmed Fakhri, who wrote the book Baharia and Fafara, mentions that in Baharia, there were 2 Coptic silversmiths who made jewelry in al-Bawiti until the 1950s. After they stopped smithing, jewelry was bought from Cairo and al-Fayum instead of locally. He states that the men dress as those in Fayum or Minya, though the wealthier ones dressed themselves in the clothes resembling those of the wealthier people in Libya for special and formal occasions. He makes note of silver ornaments worn on the side of the hair and ukus or okos, twisted red silk threads. Fakhri describes the ukos of Baharia as having weights of metal attached alongside the tassels described by Lane when he described the okos. Lane's writing implies the okos to have been somewhat widespread in his time, or at the very least not restricted to Baharia. The Bisharia and Abadaba are from the eastern desert. The Bisharia or Bisharan are the main group of Beja in Egypt, who are likely the same group that the term Medjai originally referred to. While the 2 groups are different, according to Azafami, many among them have intermarried over the years, leading to many blended traditions. One of the women's garments worn here is a 6-meter piece of fabric called a tob, much like the Sudanese one, wrapped around the body and head. Theirs are made in colors like red, fuchsia, turquoise, and bright blue. Women will also opt for a hijab wrapped securely around the head. Bisharia men historically wore a wrapped garment of white cloth as well, but I know far less about it, and a galabea with a vest is generally what you will see them wear today in regard to non-Western fashion. I have seen vests that are sometimes specifically identified as abadaba and are neutral colors with a lining of brighter fabric. The Bisharia and Abadaba women wear their hair in thin braids, the ends of which are coated with goat fat and nice-smelling herbs, and have beaded ornaments they wear on their heads. Their jewelry uses leather, imitation coral, glass beads, silver, and gold. Their nose piercing is diamond-shaped and goes through the center of the nose. Men and children wear leather charms. Their jewelry has some Sudanese and Nubian influence. Women in Dakhla and Karga wear fake tresses made of wool called makwasis in red, fuchsia, yellow, and green that have lead rings hanging from them. Other tresses made to be worn on the back of the head under the veil are called shada. Their dresses are heavily embroidered and made of black satin, though Karga's is less famous and apparently has stopped being made. Dakhla's dress is similar to Baharia. They wear dumluj, wide bangles, anklets from Baharia, and their nose ring is the same, but in silver with a hanging bead decoration. They also wear an amber bracelet referred to as a karim, which is unique to them. They wear the sakya earring, which is one of the older earring styles in Egypt, dating back to the 1830s at least. On their wedding day, they wear 7 different colored necklaces. The fakwash necklace is made of gold-painted glass beads which can easily be crushed. The Farouk's teeth necklace, also called molars or 1 gold tooth and 1 pearl tooth, is made of red and white beads. The Taurus, or lover and loved one necklace, is made of glass beads which are stuck together in 2s and mostly made of red beads. They wear a sipha necklace which resembles prayer beads. They also wear necklaces of coral and fake amber. One coral necklace is called the Murgan Jinib, made with coral, glass, and oblong lead pieces. Dresses in the Nile Delta are in the folkloric style, though with some unique qualities. They sometimes have collars attached to them which resemble a collar on a Western dress shirt, and I have seen black dresses from there with metallic embroidery that is distinct from Aswat. Kardassa embroidery was originally associated with the town Kardassa, but now Kardassa is a part of Cairo. Kardassa has historically produced textiles that it traded with Libya and Siwa. Women did the beading and embroidering, while men typically wove the fabric. Up until the 90s, most of the fabric was done by hand, but due to increased technology access, most embroidery is done by machine in workshops, and only a few embroiderers still work by hand. The style is characterized by large motifs and bright colors. Rashuk embroidery is a different style of embroidery made with a machine. It is made using a running stitch and 2 different threads for each side of fabric. It originates from a dense decorative style used on men's clothes in the 19th and 20th centuries and often uses floral motifs. It is applied to women's clothes today, and it is associated with the Nile Delta. Some traditional Nubian garments are similar to the garments of their neighbors, however plenty are unique. The jarjar, or gugar, worn in Egypt and Sudan, consists of a semi-transparent black overdress with solid designs in some areas. It is noted for its trained hem, which exists to obscure the footsteps, a custom noted in parts of Upper Egypt among people who are not Nubian as well. The gugar is associated with the mahas and the fatisha. The shuga, or tob, is a white garment which wraps around the body and head. It is only worn by married women, particularly of the Kunuz Nubians, and attaches at the left shoulder with a hilyat al-kalu'ala, a silver brooch. The kalu'ala has a hanging portion that is sometimes 50 plus centimeters long that has a large crescent, hanging triangles, fish, and ends in a ring. The Kunuz also wear jewelry known as kwakab and dinaria, which are among the pieces a groom might gift to his bride. A group that is also discussed regarding Egyptian Nubians are the Arab Nubians, or Elequat Arabs, who wear the wida jewelry piece. Nubian men wear a robe much like the galabea, sometimes called a gelbab, which is usually cream or white in color. These days they will sometimes have geometric patterns in green, yellow, red, and other bright colors added on, in similar patterns that taquiya, men's skull caps usually knitted or crocheted, have featured for some time. You will also find pants and vests decorated in this way. Nubian jewelry is typically gold, with black and white beads also being used. Silver, coral, and coral-colored glass are also popular. The silver and gold, when not cast into beads, is commonly hammered into thin sheets which are then stamped or inscribed. The gold will be made much thinner than the silver. Silver was popular until the 1940s, when demand among younger buyers fell in favor of gold. Around this time, using molds became very popular, and manual techniques became uncommon. The crescent and star are popular elements in Nubian jewelry, a style possibly based on the Ottoman flag, along with round, triangular, and fish shapes. The Gasit al-Rahman, a fatisha piece, is worn on the forehead by married women. The Rasan necklace is made of many small pear-shaped pieces. The baya, jakid, safa, and shasha are all ornaments historically common among all relevant groups of Nubians. The jakid is made of 6 round gold flat pieces with a 7th in the middle that has mashallah inscribed into it. There are curved bangles of silver, mangoa rings of silver with soldered-on pieces, moda rings with a round piece of glass mounted on and 3 balls granulated on either side. The sin aj pendant features stars and crescents prominently. More pieces include the nogar, hijil, sura, and hafaiz. A bride might wear large silver beads as a bracelet or necklace with coral, carnelian, and colored glass beads between the large beads. If she was not wearing this, she might wear a silver crescent on a string or leather strip. Toe rings of brass and silver were common among the 3 mentioned groups, and 3 earrings may be worn on the ear, 2 on the upper part and 1 on the lobe. This style is possibly very old, as there have been paintings from the Amarna period featuring earrings worn this way. The Nubian nose ring is called a zimzam. Pieces worn by men include a necklace of 4 large beads, probably cast of silver, with tassels between each bead, worn on his wedding night. At the back of this necklace, there are 3 strings of beads ending with cowrie shells.